Alrighty. Well, so everybody has locked their keys out at some point. This is a 2004 R6, and unfortunately, the gas cap key is not the same as the ignition key. I had two separate keys, and unfortunately this was involved in a very minor accident. In fact, that's not even a crash mark. That's actually from the gasoline coming out of the cap there and actually eating away the paint. But anyway, the keychain holding the gas key went flying, kind of exploded actually. And although the ignition key remained in the ignition, the rest of the keychain along with the keys on it is gone. The accident happened near a cliff, and fortunately enough, the ignition key, the bike, and I stayed off the side of the cliff. Whereas the keychain, I don't think it did. So anyway, we now have, I didn't have a spare for it because the bike didn't come with a spare. I've been meaning to change this out, didn't get around to it, and now it's gotten around and bitten me in the ass. So we're going to go ahead and remedy that today. I'm going to show you a couple of methods of how to get into a gas tank if you don't have the key. Obviously this is only for people whose bike is actually theirs. You don't want people going around siphoning your gas. So if you're one of those people, don't watch this. There's a couple basic ways to do this. You might think that you can just undo these 3 screws and take the whole assembly off. Well, that wouldn't make sense because this little key, the little cylinder, actually attaches to a mechanism which holds onto the bottom of the tank and allows it not to come up. It's the whole point of a locking gas cap. So what you have to do, there's a couple of different ways, but you have to get the cylinder to turn. Now there are a couple of different ways. You can do what's called punching and drilling. I'm going to combine those into one way. There are really 2 different ways. You can take a really hard screwdriver or a nail file, something like that. Concrete file actually is what they're called. You stick it in there, you take a cold chisel or a hammer, and you pound that little dude right into there till it breaks all those pins off. It'll shear all those pins off, in which case you can just go ahead and rotate the cylinder. Now your cylinder is obviously dead after that, so you can't rekey it or take it out or anything like that or use this mechanism anymore, so you'd have to replace it. Another thing you can do is drilling it out. Same thing, you just take a rotary drill, you drill right down, and again you're shearing all those pins off, you're breaking it, so that renders this entirely useless, so you would have to replace it. Now if you've lost your key, it's kind of a moot point anyway. Like I have, I'm not going to get it rekeyed. I don't want to pay a locksmith. I'm cheap, I'm in college, I don't want to deal with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do option 3. I used to pick locks as a hobby in high school. My dad knew a locksmith, and the guy would bring by extra picks and stuff, and bring by old locks that he'd found in the woods and stuff like that, and he'd give them to me to practice on. They're very easy to make, they're very easy to use, especially on a very elementary lock on a motorcycle. Here's a heads up and a news flash. Every lock on a motorcycle, especially older ones, are going to be very basic, and they're going to be very easy to get. Don't trust your saddlebags, don't trust your gas tank, don't trust your ignition. You'll notice that I have a little alarm on it that I put on the rotor. I'll do a review on one of those later. And I always lock the steering column. It just makes it harder, and it keeps honest people honest. We're going to go ahead and do this. So this is called a Bogota rake. It's also called a rake, but this particular design is called a Bogota. You'll see there's 3 points. And this is a tension tool. And you can use any sort of real thing that works for your particular gas tank. You really just want a multi-sided tool. This is called a snowman or a double butterfly. You can see it's pretty old, it's pretty worn down. We're not going to use that. I found it didn't work very well. Somebody said they work pretty well for gas tanks, but this particular R6 gas tank that I own is not going to work very well. Tried that already, didn't work. So what we're going to do is we're going to put that tension tool in there, just like so. And this is very hard to explain. You have to kind of just feel it for yourself, and then you'll understand. But you're going to, this motorcycle lock, this gas tank lock, is what they call a wafer lock. Has pins on either side, all right? But this is a little bit different. So this is a different type of wafer lock. It's a single-sided wafer lock. So if you can see down in there a little bit, there are pins on a normal wafer lock. There would be pins on this side and pins on that side. Now if you look at your key, it's double-sided. That's because the ignition, that wafer lock, is double-sided. So typically they'll key one side of the gas tank, and they'll do both sides of the wafer lock, of the ignition, and they'll have the keys coincide so that the same key will do both. But that means we only have one of these sides to pick, which makes our lives very easy. So you insert your tension tool, take your rake, just like so, with the mountains to the pins. You insert, and you just work your way back up and down. Just slight tension. Notice I'm not bending the tension wrench or anything crazy like that, just enough to barely move that lock a little bit. And you might have to reset your pins every once in a while. You'll hear them click. Yep, you hear a couple click. They weren't set quite the right way. I'll go ahead and do that a couple more times. There you go. Done. Just like that.